The marble corridors of the courthouse echoed with each measured step as Cole Black entered courtroom 10A just before the morning session began. A hush fell over the assembled spectators, attorneys, witnesses, and a handful of curious onlookers when she appeared dressed in a precisely tailored white suit that spoke of both confidence and professionalism. Her bearing was calm and resolute, the years of dedicated service in the Federal Bureau of Investigation reflected in the steady, assured way she carried herself. At the security checkpoint, she had shown her credentials with ease. Now, as she approached the bench to assume her role in exposing alleged corruption, Officer Anthony Cole rose from his chair behind a low oak desk. He was a veteran of the local police force, known among his colleagues for a brusque manner and an unspoken skepticism toward outsiders. The moment he spotted Cole's silver FBI badge, his lips curled into a dismissive sneer. Without as much as a polite word, he crossed the courtroom floor, grabbed her arm, and rammed her against the cool stone railing. The suddenness of the shove startled everyone present. "Where did you get that badge?" he demanded, voice low but laced with contempt. Before Cole could interject, Cole reached for his handcuffs. The metal clicked ominously around her wrists, pinning her arms behind her back. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. A court reporter's pen paused mid-sentence. Even the judge seated high upon the bench leaned forward to witness this extraordinary scene. Cole's cheek pressed against polished wood. She drew a measured breath. Her heart beat steadily despite the indignity of the moment. She had endured many challenges in her career, long nights gathering evidence, tense negotiations with reluctant witnesses, and the constant burden of knowing that truth must be defended at all costs. Yet to be humiliated in this manner, on the very precipice of revealing sordid misconduct, was a profound affront not only to her, but to every citizen who placed their trust in the rule of law. As shocked silence blanketed the courtroom, Cole's mind raced. The briefcase at her feet contained the proof of deep-seated corruption recordings, witness statements, and video clips that would discredit Cole and his companions. Though the officer believed he had silenced her, he had unwittingly set the stage for a far greater reckoning. In that tense instant, the scene was set for justice, not just to be served, but to triumph over prejudice and abuse of power. Just minutes before the confrontation, Cole had walked through the courthouse security checkpoint carrying a nondescript brown leather briefcase. Inside it lay more than routine documents. Locked within was a single USB drive containing hours of audio recordings and video footage that exposed the very heart of corruption in the Riverside Police Department. The drive held patrol car dash cam clips of officers planting false evidence, undercover recordings of higher-ups ordering the suppression of civilian complaints, and clandestine interviews with whistleblowers who had risked everything to speak out. Raised on Riverside's tough South Side, Cole had grown up watching her community struggle under the weight of unchecked authority and biased policing. From an early age, she learned to navigate those streets with dignity and resilience. She saw neighbors stopped without cause, families torn apart by officers who treated them as suspects rather than citizens. Those experiences fueled her resolve and guided her through rigorous training at the FBI Academy, where she committed herself to upholding the rule of law, even when it meant confronting the very institutions sworn to protect it. If you believe no one should be above the law, no matter their rank, comment. 1. If you think this is just another case of power misused, comment. 2. Like and subscribe to stay updated on the fight for justice. As she approached the courtroom rail, Cole's mind was replaying the critical importance of that briefcase. Each file it contained was painstakingly authenticated, GPS timestamps matched the official patrol logs, while digital signatures confirmed that no tampering had occurred. She had spent months coordinating with trustworthy contacts inside the police department, securing sworn affidavits, and verifying the chain of custody for every piece of evidence. The unedited video clips showed uniformed officers discarding contraband they themselves had introduced, then turning on innocent motorists and civilians with baseless arrests. Other recordings captured senior commanders quietly congratulating subordinates on keeping the numbers down by fabricating just enough probable cause to clear their quotas. This wasn't a tale of minor infractions or isolated bad actors. The briefcase detailed a system-wide conspiracy, an enterprise of intimidation, racial profiling, and evidence manipulation that preyed on the most vulnerable. Cole knew that exposing these truths would upend careers and shatter reputations, yet she carried the burden willingly. For her, justice meant more than a headline or a court victory. It meant restoring faith for those who had been silenced. As she set the briefcase down and squared her shoulders for the fight ahead, Cole understood that in the struggle between power and principle, the truth contained in that unassuming leather case was her most formidable weapon. Once the handcuffs clicked into place, Cole was escorted through a narrow corridor to the courthouse's small holding cell. The door's steel grate clanged shut behind her, and under the harsh fluorescent bulbs, the bright red marks on her delicate wrists were impossible to miss. She stood for a moment, dazed by the sudden shift from her role as investigator to accused. Yet even in that silence, she felt a surge of resolve. She would not be cowed. Outside her cell, whispers and camera shutters echoed down the hall. Within minutes, onlookers had already lifted smartphones and begun streaming live footage of the once impeccable federal agent in custody. The video showed her steady gaze, even as a bailiff barked orders and barred her from speaking. Viewers watched as she remained composed, refusing to appear broken by a system she had chosen to serve. As the stream went live, social media exploded. The hashtag Justice for Truth shot up across Twitter and Facebook, capturing a swell of public emotion that cut across age and politics. Reporters from local stations raced to the courthouse steps, cameras in hand, calling for statements from judges and lawyers. Headlines flashed: FBI agent arrested in courtroom standoff, claims of corruption lead to high-profile humiliation, and system shocked as evidence bearer becomes the accused. Commenters shared the video 1,000 times over, expressing disbelief and anger that the very person unveiling wrongdoing would become its next casualty. Civic groups and former colleagues posted messages of support, pledging that they would rally for her release and demand an immediate inquiry into the officer's actions. Clergy, civil rights activists, and even some retired law enforcement officers weighed in, condemning what they saw as a grotesque abuse of power. Inside the cell, Cole listened through the steel door to the distant chants of protesters gathering on the courthouse lawn. She could hear the low hum of sympathetic conversations, demands for transparency, calls for the officer's suspension, and appeals to higher authorities to step in. In a sense, she found herself heartened by the groundswell of solidarity, not because she sought personal vindication, but because the public's reaction revealed an unwavering belief in fairness and accountability. Though humiliated that day, Cole recognized something vital: when silence meets injustice, the collective voice of bystanders can shatter walls. And in that instant, she understood that her personal ordeal had sparked a broader awakening, one that could propel the search for truth far beyond the walls of the courtroom. When the judge summoned her back to the bench, she approached with steady purpose. Placing her brown leather briefcase before her, she withdrew the small USB drive that held months of painstaking work. The room fell silent as the clerk dimmed the lights and activated the projector, the glow tracing her silhouette against the courtroom's granite walls. The first video clip appeared, the officer's own voice, crisp and unguarded, ordering subordinates to shape witness statements and conceal exculpatory evidence. His face, caught in mid-sentence, betrayed a confidence that would not last. Cole spoke over the audio, calmly identifying dates, locations, and names, each detail matching documents she had previously submitted. On the next clip, the officer barked instructions to fabricate charges against an innocent man, the staccato rhythm of his commands underscoring the brazen abuse of power. Gasps rose in the back rows as elderly spectators and longtime residents recognized the voice and the faces on screen. Jurors leaned forward, eyes fixed on the unmistakable proof of wrongdoing. Even the officer's attorney, accustomed to vigorous defense, sat slack-jawed as the tapes continued to reveal systematic corruption. In that moment, the badge that had been wielded to intimidate became the very instrument of his undoing. If you believe no one should be above the law, no matter their rank, comment 1. If you think this is just another case of power misuse, comment 2. Like and subscribe to stay updated on the fight for justice. With each video segment, Cole's measured testimony wove a narrative too coherent to deny. She presented body camera stills showing forced searches, followed by internal memos instructing officers to bend the rules for expediency. The courtroom, once charged with tension, now brimmed with clarity. This was not a lone error in judgment, but a deliberate, sustained campaign of misconduct. When the lights returned, the officer's arrogant posture had vanished. His earlier sneers were replaced by a pale, trembling stare. The judge, his own expression grave, acknowledged the weight of the evidence and ordered a brief recess to consider interim remedies. As Cole stepped down, the hush that followed carried a profound sense of justice reclaimed. Outside reporters gathered, sensing that the seeds of reform had been sown and that a single act of courage backed by unassailable proof had the power to transform an entire system. When the judge reconvened the session, his gavel fell with solemn authority. "Officer Anthony Cole," he intoned, "you are ordered detained on charges of obstruction of justice and violation of civil rights." At those words, the courtroom erupted in stunned murmurs. The very man who had tried to silence a federal agent now found himself at the mercy of the law he had sworn to uphold. Cole's face drained of color as deputies approached. The same badge he had brandished so arrogantly now felt heavy against his chest. He offered no resistance as they secured the handcuffs, their cold steel clicking shut around his wrists. The crowd, once frozen in shock, leaned forward, eyes wide at the sight of a law enforcement officer led away in disgrace. Cole remained standing at the podium, her posture composed yet triumphant. She watched carefully as Cole was escorted past the first row of spectators, his head bowed, unable to meet any gaze. It was an image of justice served the oppressor, rendered powerless by the very rules he had abused. As he passed her, Cole leaned forward, her voice carrying clear and unwavering. "You didn't think I'd have the last word, did you?" The words rippled through the room, drawing gasps, and beneath them, a wave of relieved applause. In that instant, every person present understood the full circle of accountability, how truth painstakingly gathered could topple even the most entrenched authority. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notepads while camera flashes flickered from the gallery. Conversations erupted in hushed tones, discussions of civil rights protections, the importance of whistleblower courage, and the systemic reforms now deemed essential. For many in attendance, veterans, long-serving public servants, and concerned citizens alike, this was a watershed moment, a testament to the principle that no one stands above the law. Outside the courthouse, the night air felt charged with possibility. Groups gathered on the steps, talking earnestly about what they had witnessed. In coffee shops and living rooms across the city, people would replay the story of Officer Cole's downfall and the steadfast resolve of the woman who held him to account. For Cole and all who fought beside her, the arrest marked not an end, but a beginning, the start of a new chapter in which justice was not just an ideal, but an expectation vigilantly upheld even when it demanded confronting those within the very institutions designed to protect it. In the weeks that followed Officer Cole's arrest, Cole and her seasoned attorney partnered with a remorseful insider to peel back layers of misconduct that stretched far beyond Riverside. Among dusty archives and sealed case files, they uncovered a 5-year-old death, officially ruled a suicide but marred by inconsistencies. No bullet trajectory report, missing witness statements, and a coroner's note that never made it into the permanent record. Each revelation pointed to a chilling pattern: low-level officers quietly disciplining undesirables through coercion and cover-ups, while higher-ups turned a blind eye in exchange for favorable performance reviews. Armed with this intelligence, Cole drafted a comprehensive proposal for systemic reform. The document called for new whistleblower protections strong enough to shield truth-tellers from retaliation, a publicly accessible database where every citizen could track complaints against law enforcement, and federally mandated retraining programs focused on cultural competency, de-escalation tactics, and ethical decision-making. When her team presented these recommendations to a congressional oversight committee, the response was immediate and bipartisan. Within days, bills were introduced to codify the proposed changes in task forces formed to audit every municipal police department's procedures. Newspapers ran front-page editorials praising the effort, while community groups organized listening sessions to ensure that reform would address lived realities on both sides of the badge. Across the country, law enforcement agencies began overhauling their internal affairs divisions, inviting independent monitors to review past cases, and launching mentorship schemes for new recruits. The ripple effect was unmistakable. Officers once resigned to processing paperwork found themselves retrained in empathy and accountability, and citizens who had long felt voiceless watched their tax dollars fund transparent justice initiatives. Although the road ahead would still require vigilance and courage, Cole's steadfast pursuit of the full truth had ignited a national movement. In every state capitol and city hall, the legacy of one courageous confrontation continued to unfold, proving that when abuses are exposed, real change can follow, and that justice once awakened refuses to remain confined. After the courtroom storm had settled, she returned to her new office at FBI headquarters, no longer simply an agent, but a mentor and architect of integrity reforms. Each morning, she greeted recruits with a firm handshake and stories of resilience, reminding them that badges are earned, not assumed. Under her guidance, every newcomer studied a revised code of conduct that emphasized empathy and accountability as much as enforcement. Yet it was at home in the quiet of her childhood living room that she felt the weight of all she'd achieved and all she'd still need to do. There on a side table rested a faded photograph of the father she never knew, a man whose absence had taught her early on the value of bearing one's own name with honor. She closed her eyes, fingers brushing the worn frame, and at last allowed herself to exhale. This isn't just my story, she thought, looking out the window at the autumn leaves drifting by. It's ours. Across the nation, communities once wary of law enforcement now watched as police departments adopted the very reforms she championed: independent review boards, transparent complaint logs posted online, and standardized training in de-escalation and cultural awareness. Citizenship classes in high schools began to include her case as a study in civic courage. Through local newspapers and public forums, her foundation kept the conversation alive, offering legal clinics for those who feared speaking up. Her phone occasionally rang late at night with news of young officers turning whistleblower or families seeking help after an injustice. She answered each call, drawing on her own experience to guide them towards safety and justice. She knew, however, that systemic change is as stubborn as it is necessary. Old habits die slowly, and prejudice, even when exposed, can resurface in quieter, more insidious forms. So she wrote letter after letter to Congress, attended roundtable meetings with police chiefs and community leaders, and quietly supported scholarship programs for underrepresented students in criminal justice fields. Each action was a small brick in a larger foundation she hoped would outlast her career. Her journey from being handcuffed in a courthouse to reshaping the very institutions that had failed her remains a testament to one simple truth. When one person dares to speak truth to power, they invite everyone else to find their voice. And as she often reminded new agents, lasting justice is not achieved with a single verdict or reform, but through the steady, persistent work of those who refuse to let the next generation inherit the silence of the past. This story demonstrates that injustice only prevails when we choose silence, and a single brave voice can ignite a call for change. The message is that every small action, pressing record, sharing evidence, or submitting files to investigators can weaken the walls of prejudice. Viewers are encouraged to share their opinions. Did the image of a service member of color treated unjustly on her hometown street awaken your personal responsibility to defend human rights? Do you believe that social media and legal action can generate a wave of change despite pressures from conservative forces? At the same time, we invite you to predict: by what year do you think racism will end? 2030, 2040, or even later? Each forecast adds to our collective dialogue, helping the community chart a long-term strategic course. Please share this story with those who have not yet dared to speak up, because only when we connect can every voice contribute to building lasting justice for all.